Well, welcome to Lights Up, the high school theater podcast. I'm Pete Kramer with Pete Kramer Media. I'm so happy to welcome two gentlemen of the theater to the show this week. Neil Schleifer and Tom Beck, the co-directors of theater at Pelham Memorial High School. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
We have so much to talk about today, and listeners, you are in for a treat. Just saying Schleifer and Beck makes me smile a little bit. They are what I like to call quintuple threats. They sing, they dance, they act, they direct, and they've been known to costume. So there you go. That's at least five things. First, let's talk about a little background. Neil, last June, you retired from teaching at Pelham, but you're still staying active with the group.
Yes, they can't get rid of me that easily.
And to tell you a little bit about Neil, his first project after retirement was writing a fresh adaptation of Moliere's The Imaginary Invalid, as we do, just.
There you go, playwriting. There's the sixth one.
The sixth one. There you go. That's right. There's some sextuple threat. I can't even say that. Tom, how long have you been at Pelham?
This is my 23rd year at Pelham. And before that, I was at Loyola School in Manhattan for 5 years. So yeah, I've been teaching a while, always in educational theater, and I love it.
That's great. Are you at the middle school or are you at the high school?
I'm at the high school, but I also do the middle school shows as well.
Mm-hmm. You both collaborate on the middle school shows?
Not so much. Neil usually helps me out by costuming that one, but I have two other assistants that work with me from middle school, Arshia Paniker and Jesse Pellegrino. So, and then Jesse does join us in the high school as choreographer. So I kind of think of the middle school as like my JV squad, and then the high school is the varsity, because we get them ready, creating characters, understanding scene work from 6th grade on. So when they get to me in 9th grade, they have an understanding of how it works, which is great.
That's a beautiful on-ramp you got there. That's and what kind of middle school shows are you doing?
Well, we just did Something Rotten Junior, which the kids got a kick out of because they had seen Neil and I did a local production in Bronxville at ACT, so some of them saw that. We do one show a year, so we usually do a big musical. And the year before we did SpongeBob, the junior version as well. So they had a great time.
That's great. The that production, that ACT production of Something Rotten, it felt like the golden age of Westchester theater for me. It top 5 musicals I've seen in Westchester, hands down. It was just it had everything. It seemed like there used to be, remember Theater Inform? It was
yes, back in the day.
Marie Boutry put out, and it was like pages and pages of auditions and groups, and every town had a community theater, and they all rehearsed at the high school, and that's so long gone. But what Armand Paganelli and Janice Paganelli and George Kroom did at ACT in Bronxville was nothing short of amazing. It was just it was such a Valentine to theater, because that's what Something Rotten's about. But you guys just crushed it on every level. It was a lot of fun, and Armand and Janice and Stephen Ferry with music, and George. It's great because you get this dream team to put it together, and we loved working with their founder, Arlene Wendt, for many years. She's one of our favorite directors. So it really felt like a golden age show again. You're right. Yeah. Well, so I talked to Liam Ginsberg and Grace Kiami the other day. They're at NYU now, and they were ringers for you guys for years, and they're on March 14th. They're going to be at Symphony Space for this Roger Rees benefit, Rees Awards alumni benefit. Every time I go see a show at Pelham, I always think, wow, this is the great thing about a show at Pelham is, and maybe it's that on-ramp you have, is that the kids act the heck out of the roles. It's not just singing and dancing. It's not just hitting your light. It's these are fully formed characters, and that doesn't happen a lot. I see plenty of shows, and there's a handful where you're like, okay, these guys get it. They're taking all elements of it. How do you do that, guys? How do you instill that? Does it start in sixth grade? And how do you instill that culture of we act here?
Well, it starts really on day one. Well, I was going to say day one of rehearsal, but we've started doing workshops even before we get into auditions, where we're trying to get kids to develop good skills so that they understand maybe a little bit more about even the casting process, what they need to do to, become part of the scene. We guide students to choose audition material that suits their strengths, that's appropriate to the pieces that we're doing. We've done dance workshops in advance of auditions so that students who maybe don't even consider themselves dancers can feel more comfortable exploring movement styles and experience relief when they see they're not the only ones who may not be perfect the first time they try something. Because you know what? Theater is all about taking risks. So if we can get them to feel comfortable taking risks and not feel judged, they'll also get a sense of what it's like to be part of a team, and part of an ensemble where everybody's contribution matters. But we often begin the rehearsal process, whether it's the musical or the play, with what we call the character circle, where the actors are asked to answer the one major question, which is, who am I? In as many ways as they can, based on the script. Things they know about themselves, what do they do, what do other people say about them. So, for example, for Pippin, the title character might answer, I am a man, I am a son, I am a grandson, I am confused, I am in search of a purpose. All of the things that they can find right in the script. Now, if they answer with an adjective, something like, I am confused, what does that mean to be confused? Because you can't just play confused. How does that translate into an action, a movement, a facial expression? You can't play an adjective, but you can demonstrate the verb, the action that makes someone seem a certain way. Now, maybe that's where I come from this as an English teacher, that I can break it down, in a way that hopefully they've been doing in class already whenever they're reading literature.
Yeah, and I think that building off what Neil said, I think that then goes to the next conversation after who I am is to what do I want, right? What do I want in this scene, in this show, and what am I willing to do to get what I want, right? That's what I always learned from my acting coach, Sister Francesca Thompson at Fordham. And if those stakes are going to come, your stakes have to be high enough, coming from knowing who you are and what you want. And I think the best example I think that Neil and I did recently that builds off that is Urinetown, which is a bizarre universe, right? So, Pete, I do the forensic speech stuff too. So one of the things I tell the judges when they're judging dramatic performance is, how does that 15, 16-year-old kid transport you out of the classroom you're in or the auditorium you're in into the universe they're creating with a character who wants and has obstacles, whether it's humorous or serious, to get. And I think that's what happened specifically with Urinetown, because I've seen it so many times, different productions, and it's so important to get the style. And that can only come from understanding the characters and the wacky universe that they're in.
And so the stakes, absolutely. Yeah. The stakes. Are they willing to lie to get what they want, cheat, bribe, steal, kill? Are they willing to listen? Are they willing to learn? Do they apply sincerity, honesty, trust to get what they want? These are all choices, and there are dozens of possibilities. Rehearsal is for deciding which choice works best and when. And we've done a number of shows where the stakes are literally life and death, like Urinetown, or like And Then There Were None, which had 10 people, 9 really, since one of them was the actual murderer, who had to figure out how not to be killed, how to be suspicious of everybody, or they risk their lives, right? We've done shows where the stakes revolved around love, like Almost Maine, which had 9 vignettes where couples had to figure out how one person could get the other person to return the feelings that they had for them.
And I think that also, even we did it again with Imaginary Invalid, as you mentioned, right? Because it's Moliere, right? It's so specific as to what those stock characters are. And again, how do you make it that they are believable in that universe of what they want, whether it's love, and that's, you know, the humor comes from that. But again, that's where you see the style, which is why I think I love kind of what you said, Pete, about the triple threat idea. I love that the plays are important too. I think the plays and the forensic speech are like sort of the training ground, I would say, or some of the things that you could really sharpen your toolbox as the actor. And I remember Neil, the rehearsal for Imaginary Invalid, we gave them one rehearsal where like, go for broke, go 100% so big that we have to say, okay, pull it back. This is not believable anymore. And it was such a great exercise to see, as I say, and Neil says, you know, it's not about yelling and screaming. It's about, how do I move those molecules, right? How do I get from my stage to the back of that Pelham Auditorium and get the people to understand who I am, what I want, and what my role is in the story.
But it's not also just what they're saying. It's also how they're listening to each other.
Yes.
We do something that's called active listening. In other words, an engaging actor needs to hear what other people on stage are saying and not just listen for a cue. They have a desire for an answer. How important is that information? What will they do with that information? How does that information affect them? If they have a reason to be engaged, then they will be engaging, even when they aren't speaking a word. And even more compelling, how can I make it seem like I, as the character, am hearing these words for the first time? Do they surprise me? Do they disappoint me? Do they thrill me? How do I recreate these feelings as if I've never experienced them before? Because our shows, we do like 3 or 4 performances in a weekend. And sadly, you know, that's what theater is. It's here and it's gone. So they only have 3 or 4 chances to make those experiences count and be able to recreate it again, 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 and it's gone. But
I think
each time that they do it, it's got to be hearing it for the first time, reacting to it for the first time.
I think the work really bears itself out in the work of the ensemble, because watching Urinetown, everybody in Snuff That Girl, that song that is just bizarre to be in a musical. Right. But everybody in that group, everybody surrounding Hope when she's bound to that chair, everybody's stakes were through the roof. And that work that you did in rehearsal, preparing them and saying each person is coming to that scene, to that hideout with intention and with stakes. There wasn't a single, you could look at you could freeze that frame. And actually, when I shot the rehearsal, I could freeze that frame and I could take that photo and I could look at it. And every single person in that frame had an axe or had some sort of stake in the action. There isn't a single clinker. There's not a single kid sitting there slumped without really being, invested in what's happening in that moment. It's really remarkable, guys, the level of commitment you get out of these kids who have algebra homework.
Mm-hmm.
And several teams that they belong to, like an after-school job.
Well, that's why we rehearse, as you know, at night, right? 6:30 to 9:30 usually, because then it gives them a chance if they do have something else sports-wise or work, they go home, they eat, they shower, whatever, they come back and then they're ready to go, and that's the nice part of it. But I think you're right with Urinetown that I think we talked a lot about, and we do all the time, Neil and I, about, you can't just walk on stage and then get your character. Like, where were you 10 minutes before? Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? Yeah, and that's
and
important.
Also we said to them, there are things that are not in the script, and probably things that the audience will never guess or never know, but that might be important to you. So when you look to your left or your right and you see 6 other people on that stage, how do you know them? Where did you meet them? What is your relationship? Who do you like? Who do you not like? So that when you're walking past them, there's an attitude, right?
Mm.
And again, the author doesn't give you that. That's your job as an actor to create that. And in some ways, when you're looking at ensemble work, where sometimes kids, they stick their nose up in the air about, oh, I don't want to be in the ensemble. I don't have many lines or any lines. That's not what's important. What's important is, who are you? I come back to what we do on day 1 of rehearsal. Who are you? And what is your relationship to everyone else on stage? Because believe me, even if you don't have a line, even if you don't have a solo, if you can make that engaging, it's going to be just as you said, Peter, that if somebody's eye strays to you at a random moment, they're going to be compelled that you created something out of nothing.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
How important is it for you guys? Because I'm looking back at the last 5 years of shows. You guys, musicals. You do the straight plays as well. But Bright Star, Bat Boy, Into the Woods, Urinetown, and now this year it's Pippin. That's a wide array of acting challenges, stylistic challenges, singing challenges, dancing challenges. All of those things are baked into it. But let's drill down, if we could, just to the acting challenges. How important is it for you? It seems like it would be, given what those shows, to give kids that varied experience of styles in their 4 years at the high school.
Yeah, I always look back at what the Jesuits used to have, what they call the grad at grad. So the graduate at graduation, in the last 4 years, what have they seen? What have they been exposed to, been able to? And that's how Neil and I kind of put together our season sometimes, is saying, well, what are these 4? Do they have a classic? Do they have a golden age? Do they have something new? Do they have something that they never worked on? And we've had kids go on to college for this, and they're like, I cannot believe you did that show. Like, you did Bright Star? What? Wow. Like, so we liked, and George Kroom always puts his 2 cents into, because we always like kind of different choices sometimes. But I think it's great that we do give them a variety of styles to play in their 4 years.
And it also goes into the straight plays, the dramas that we do. In the last couple of years, we did a Moliere, which is a classic. We did an Agatha Christie mystery. We did a hilarious farce in Lend Me a Tenor. You give them a little bit of a taste for, obviously you want them to have fun doing what they need to do. But we've had an awful lot of kids who've gone on to BFA programs who are going to need to know how to do a variety of different style work and be aware of what else is out there. You don't want to send kids out unprepared, the same way that our academic programs don't want to send kids out into the world not knowing algebra, even though they may think they're never going to use algebra again, right? They'll find their way, their moment. And we try to do that with the dramatic program too.
Are there kids who specialize, who say, I'm a fall straight play person and I don't do the musical, or is it?
Yeah, we've had people do that. Like, some especially will say, because of the sports schedule or whatever, they'll say, look, I'm a fall person, or I'm a spring person, or I'm not
a singer, or I'm not a dancer. And we respond sometimes to that with, you're not a singer yet. You're not a dancer yet. Because
the power of yet.
The thing about our program also is that we've had the privilege of being able to cast shows with 30 kids in it, 35 kids, 40. So that if you're somebody who's on the lower echelon of what you think your singing or dancing skills are, you're going to be pushed up a level, because you're surrounded by people who are going to help you and are going to support you. And you're going to walk away saying, wow, I just did something I thought I could never do. I can't tell you how many seniors we've had who've come into the program and finally decided senior year, after never having done a show before. I want to do this. It sounds like fun. All of my friends have done it. I got to give it a chance. Who then walk away saying, why did I wait 4 years to try this? Was it my fear that was holding me back, or it didn't seem cool enough to do whatever it was? They end up saying it was such a good experience to push them past that bar that they thought they would never cross past.
Absolutely. And that's one of the nice things too about being a teacher there on staff is, you'll remember way back, and you remember, Pete, when we did the violinist in the attic. Remember, we had a Fiddler on the Roof. We couldn't say the name because of the tour. You did that great article. We needed Russian dancers, and I got my lacrosse players who were in my AP class. And then one of the soccer players is like, "Oh, Beck, you're not going to ask me?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And we wound up getting these like core guys who then brought their friends, and then we were able to do Hello Dolly down the road and have all those male, dancers. So it was very funny to see how I was able to, when I first started, be able to use the classroom and say, guys, I think you'd like this. I can guarantee you'll get a prom date. The ratio is great. Come on. And it worked.
But what I love about that, Tom, is that it talks about the challenge every director faces in high school is I've got to shop the halls to fill out my cast. I've got to turn a lacrosse kid into a Russian bottle dancer. And I'm going to do it. I know eventually it'll happen, but I'm not sure in the fall how it's going to happen in April.
Exactly.
That's the challenge. I would imagine that's the fun part for you guys, and maybe some sleepless nights. But that
I have to tell you, we've been very, very lucky. Knock wood, we have never had to go searching for people or begging for people, or there's been a hole in the cast. We've always been able to get the people that we need, and I'm sure a lot of the programs out there specifically are looking for, how do I get boys to join the program? Well, Tom found the way, which is you get them engaged in middle school and they follow you into the high school. But if you're a presence in the school, I have to say, Tom is a very entertaining teacher. He is loved by people in middle school and high school. When I was there, I'd like to think that I added my own level of kind of dry humor, and kids knew who I was. So if I said to them, or Tom said to them, why don't you come out? I think you'd be great. You know what? We were able to talk some kids into doing it without twisting arms, and
I think and I know because we both did some like, for example, the 9H stuff together, we were doing Cyrano, right? And Romeo and Juliet, and you'd hear these kids reading in class. And I'm like, this kid's got it. This kid will be good. And we were able to find a bunch of people that way who were like, oh, I'm not sure. I'm like, you got a great voice. Try it. And that was nice because I think some of my friends who are not teachers at the school and then directed a school, it's kind of harder because they don't have the connection to the student body maybe. So I'm really happy that, we do have that connection.
And I do have to say also that from some of my classes, I also found kids who ended up being on the set crew. Kids who ended up leading the costume crew as seamstresses, or people on the makeup crew. So you find the kids who need a place, want a place, have a skill, and apply it in whatever way they want to. Because believe it or not every kid wants to be center stage in a spotlight.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you guys act. I remember seeing you in Young Frankenstein and Nyack at Elmwood Playhouse, which is probably the only stage that's smaller than the one at Pelham.
It's true. Postage stamp.
I've often joked that at Elmwood Playhouse, they couldn't do Oklahoma. They could only fit Oklahoma because they couldn't it's just not big enough.
Iowa.
Exactly. A smaller state. But the thing about, and Pelham's off stage is like, you walk off stage and you either hit your head on a bar or you've got stairs that go down like at a death-defying angle.
Yes.
But how do you guys are working actors, and this summer you'll be in a show. and Neil, you're an extra in you're an extra in
We don't call them extras. We call
sorry,
them
a background actor.
players.
Background. I'm sorry, background
talent.
Yes.
background talent. Okay, so you've been background talent, Mrs. Maisel, and other shows. You're out there working, and that, I guess I'm wondering, is being on the receiving end of a director in the summertime or on a set when you're on a set. Does that change the way you approach your kids? Does hearing that, getting direction, help you give direction?
I think we've all had experiences. If you've ever been on stage, we've all had people who are amazing directors, and we've all had people who are like, I think I might do that differently. I think Tom and I once had an experience where we were doing a show that Tom and I had both previously done somewhere else. And the director that we were working with was a little lost when it came to one particular scene. And this director turned to me and said, what would you do in this? How would you do this? And my response was, I would do it really well. but then we went past that moment of humor, and we kind of guided them to, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that Tom and I are both not just directors, but also teachers, that you learn from the people you work with, and you guide the people that you work with. And sometimes that's a challenge because, you have to know when to shut up and let them do their job, and trust that if you said, yes, I want to work with you, and yes, I'm going to work here, that they actually do know what they want to do. So, and many times they've been phenomenal, fantastic people to work with. And yes, you pick up things here and there that you say to yourself, I want to do that. Tom and I both had the privilege of working with John Orifice at Sock and Buskin at Pelham. He ran the program for more than 20 years, Tom, or was it?
28 years, I think. Yeah.
Right. And
Wow, yeah.
I have to tell you, that's how I got to Pelham. So before I actually was on the teaching staff, I was working as somebody who was brought in to work with the program. I worked with actors as an acting coach, as a dialect coach, then as an assistant director, and working with John and seeing the way that he molded young people. And he had a very lovely, supportive approach that, honestly, when I came into work there, maybe I needed some of my rough edges sandpaper down. And he was a wonderful mentor to show us how, in an educational facility, this might be a better way to work on one level.
Absolutely. And going back to what we said about the character stuff, I remember when we did Drood with John, he had each of the kids do a character journal. Like they had to hand it to John, that we'd talk about, oh, okay, so you're dating who in this group. And it was really interesting. And I was lucky because John guided us a lot as to, the educational theater world, how things work. And my favorite thing, I still have it on my desk, is he used to always write notes on his clipboard. And his last thing he wrote was, Tom and Neil, make it yours, John. And I have it framed on my desk. And it's true, because he left us a wonderful legacy of Sock and Buskin. Because when we first got involved with Westchester Theater, community theater, everybody had gone to Pelham and knew John. And I'm like, who is this guy? Hal Prince?
Right.
And then,
yes, he was.
And he was. And then lo and behold, I went and saw it. Neil was working with him on the production of Secret Garden. And I went and I said, I think I want to go. I had left teaching. I was doing human resources for a couple of years. And I said, I think I want to go back to teaching. And it was really because of what John had instilled in these kids and that Sock and Buskin family. And I think that's part of it too. If they feel safe, they're going to experiment how to be that better actor and character and want to put their best foot forward in everything they do, no matter what their part is. And that's what I think is is really unique. I think that John's legacy is still there. Absolutely.
John was the first person I went to talk to when I started this beat, when I started covering high school theater. And I'd met him. I don't know where I'd met him, but I said, I need to talk to this guy. Maybe he was at the Metro Awards one year and had said something, amazing. And I was like, oh, that guy gets it. There are people who get it, I think
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and you actually just said something really great, Tom, whether you wanted to or not, that the comfort level and the safety of being in a culture of theater that elevates the acting and elevates the character and puts intention and process behind it to make it real. That when we sit in the audience and we're watching a production where those things have been taken care of, we can put our shoulders back, we can lean back, we can say what they always say, which is sit back and relax. Sometimes you can't sit back and relax. Sometimes you're gripping for dear life because the preparation isn't there. But I will say that, sitting in that great little auditorium at Pelham, I've never felt like I was in for a ride that I wasn't looking forward to.
Well, thank you.
I will also tell you this. One of the reasons that I hope that our audiences feel comfortable is that we give autonomy to the kids. One of the rituals that we do on opening night is we do a circle where everybody joins hands. Tom, me, the choreographer, the musical director, all of the cast members.
And the crew.
And we send some energy around the circle. Our eyes are closed and we talk to them about, the focus of the show for that evening. And then we ask them to open their eyes. And when they do, Tom and I and the choreographer and the designers, we're all standing in the middle of the circle and they are one connected circle. And we say to them, this circle is the play. You now own it. The play is now in your hands. Please note that we are not in the circle anymore. You own the circle. So now it's up to you to take what you've worked on, what you've built, the work you've done, the care that you've put into these weeks, and show it to the audience for the first time. And it's yours. And I think that when we hand them that responsibility, they take that responsibility very, very deliberately. They are.
Well, it's empowering. It's empowering the students. And I think that's part of it. And also, even when we talk about the community theater, we want to work with people like Janice Maganelli and Jason Summers and people that Tom Kramer, people that we like and we have fun with, right? That's part of it. So you want it to be fun. And that I think is important too. There is work to be done, certainly. And we'll call the kids when they haven't done their work. We'll call them on it and they know. But I think at the end, it also has to have that sense of joy, no matter what story you're telling, to be able to say who I am in the process and what my role is really empowering for a kid.
And it's also kind of funny because we've had kids that have worked in our program who've been like, they look at George Kroom, who is many times our musical director, who I went to college with 40 years ago. And they'll look at Jesse, who is our choreographer, who we did a production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum at Yorktown Stage 20 years ago, where I was Pseudolus and he was one of the Proteans.
And I was Hero.
And the kids will turn to us and they'll say, do you just bring your friends? Andrew Moser. Do you just bring your friends to work with us? And we say, yeah, because that's what theater is. It's cultivating friendships and alliances. And guess what? One of the people who was working with us on the play, John Hardigan, was our student at Pelham. He was in
Les Mis.
Rob Jr. and
Mhm.
Arshia, who is working with the middle school in middle school herself, was one of the servants in Annie. And
Yep.
we
Great.
jokingly say all roads lead back to Pelham, because if you are our friend, you will stay our friend, and we will work with you forever.
And
That's great.
that's why we're lucky to have Joe Egan too on the set side, because as you said, it's such a tiny stage. He works magic, and what I like is he comes in and teaches the kids the skills, because Lord knows you don't want to give me a hammer, but he really
And
does.
schools don't have shop classes anymore, so how else are they going to learn how to use a drill or a saw?
Yep.
Right.
100%. 100%.
The I guess when you did Les Mis, that question on the first day, who am I? That's pretty easy for Jean Valjean. I mean, that was
Right.
kind of a ringer. Well, it says here,
Well, as long as his first answer is 24601, he's on track.
So you talked about the circle, Neil, and you talked about giving the kids ownership and how important that was to kind of hand that off to them. Does it ever happen that kids are policing each other, saying or talking, not like in a combative way, but just kind of saying, hey, listen, you got to up your game, or I need you to do this on this. And is there that sort of give and take? I know in community theater, it can be kind of dicey when you're
well,
you're not
we
getting
know that.
something from your scene partner.
Yeah, I mean, we have a rule that I'm sure many schools do, that you don't give other actors notes, right? That's what only the directors do. But I do think we're really lucky in that the seniors, and I think Neil would agree with me, the seniors really step up into excellent leadership roles without us really asking them to. They set a tone for rehearsals. They'll call people on, you got to get here on time, or if you're going to be late, text the stage manager, and that's not coming from us. I mean, it is, because we set the tone, but the seniors really, I think it's important, and the kids look up to those seniors and look forward to becoming seniors. And we have a great group this year in Pippin, and they're wonderful. And they will often say, we had great seniors when we were freshmen, and we want to model after how we were accepted, because there's a lot of young people, freshmen and sophomores in Pippin, for example. And I'm very proud of them and that, because I think it's a great way of showing that kind of seniority and the importance of leadership in the club.
I think that I was talking to Grace Kiami today, and she mentioned Bright Star, and she said she remembered the girl who sang the song.
Yeah, Malia McClellan.
Malia, and she remembered what school she's going to now, and that she was a senior, and how formative that moment was. Being in the ensemble, standing up stage right on the platform up above, how that informed her, and said that, and she'll never forget that moment. Being in the ensemble, singing Bright Star, and those moments, those theater moments, are indelible. I mean, the freshmen this year will never forget Corner of the Sky, even if they're standing off stage or bird song, or all those moments, all those memories.
Yep.
Is how important. I guess one of the questions I had going into this was how you keep that ball in the air. There might be clinkers here and there. There might be a year that you're like, let's move on to the junior class. But that culture, that sustaining, making it yours, making sure that you're kind of moving the ball down the field at all times. How do you deal with setbacks, or how do you deal with it when things aren't working 100%?
I think it goes back to, and Neil probably talked to Joe, I think it goes back to the process, right? There's, as long as there's energy there, every rehearsal is not going to be great, right? And you're going to get frustrated when you don't know your lines, or you grab the wrong prop, or whatever it is. But I think if you keep the mood saying, okay, we're going to take a note on it and just go on. Years ago, I did All in the Timing. It was so hard to get that one with the bell that kept ringing.
With the bell.
Sure thing.
Yes.
Sure thing. And I would louse up a line, and Neil gave everybody, he was directing it, if you make a mistake like that or something doesn't go right the way you want it, just let it go in the universe. Let it go and keep going. Because if you keep obsessing over that mistake or what you did wrong or replaying it in your head, you're going to ruin the rest of your performance. And I think that's one of the things we do with the kids is saying, let it go. Right?
If you live in the past, reliving that mistake, you're not experiencing the present. You're not letting the next moment happen.
Right.
So there's that. It's that thing of ownership where you say to somebody, you're responsible. And guess what? Unlike many other things that you're going to do, you're on a stage. There are lights. There's 500 people staring at you. You're either going to do it to the best that you can or you're not. And if you don't, you're not the only one that knows that you didn't. So how do you want to be responsible for this? Do you want to be responsible for being the best that you can be? And I also have to say something that I used to say in my classroom, which is being the best you can be today is not necessarily the best you can be tomorrow. But come bringing your best game, try to remember the lyrics, try to get the steps right, try not to leave the prop off stage. If you keep following through on all of the different elements that you can do your best at, even if you're less than your best at one of the elements, I promise you're going to rock it with all of the other elements, and you'll be proud of the work that you did. And whatever you didn't do right today, guess what? You still have 2 more performances. Get it right then.
Yep. And I always
move more molecules tomorrow.
And I always say to the middle schoolers, and you'll have an awesome costume. And they're like, yeah.
It's pretty amazing. We joke about this, but we have discovered that putting somebody in a costume, putting somebody in a wig, giving them an extraordinary prop to use, they're sometimes able to create an amazing character that they didn't think they had in them because they look in the mirror and see themselves, and they don't see themselves. Right. They see the character.
That's great. I was fortunate to interview Ellen Burstyn once, and she was doing Picnic on Broadway. And I went to see the show, and then the next day I interviewed her, and I was like, I noticed your shoes. You wear Buster Brown shoes. And I said, it's such a young shoe for an established actress, somebody who'd been around. And she actually said, that's 100% right. And I had to have those shoes because that shows where she was mature, on a maturity level. She never really grew up. She's still a little girl wearing her Buster Brown shoes. And there's so much of that. James Norton, the actor, the Irish actor who I interviewed.
Yes.
The same thing with Finian's Rainbow. He had to have the shoes the first day. He had to stand in his shoes the first day to play Finian because the shoes made the man as far as he was concerned. Until he walked in those shoes, he couldn't walk in the character's shoes. So I guess there must be, these are outside in actors, all right? People who need that.
Oftentimes British trained. Yeah. Yes.
Need the trappings to make it happen. That must happen for you guys too. There might be a piece that informs a character that you say, start working with this or try this.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing when we're able to say to the prop crew, like, just get me some doofers. Like, let's see, maybe, and let's have it at rehearsal. And we oftentimes don't rehearse in the theater because Joe's building. So we'll rehearse in the cafeteria, which you've seen, and we'll bring down, the props and the stuff. And the kids are great. They take it up and but I think it's important to get everything going. So it's not just like opening night, here's your prop. What do I do with this?
Right.
Yep.
Right. Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great talking with you. Some really great insights and things that people can use. You can take any of these ideas that the guys had and work them into your your next show and be intentional about bringing character along with those songs and dances and making sure that they know who they are and what they want and where they've been and maybe what shoes they're going to wear.
Why not? Why not? And I think that's a good idea, because what the next thing is, acting, whether it's through a song or in a monologue, it's very similar. How do you find out who you are? And I think one of the things too that my students love too is what you do, Pete. So thank you. They love getting the coverage and seeing these things. They've all were watching about the Roger Rees, and a lot of them are going to go see their friends in March. So thank you for what you do for the educational theater. I really appreciate it.
Sure. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you, guys. I think we're gonna end it there, but so great to have Neil Schleifer and Tom Beck with me today on Lights Up, the High School Theater Podcast.
That's better.